helps us stay on task here. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 2:36. And updates on recent and future call volume. I really appreciate the email that you sent out, Rod, that talked about the carryout that you did and the fact that one of the ambulances went down. So you had a little more recovery than you had planned on. So talk to us about your call volume and also the state of the equipment and things like that.
Yes, so I pulled up my numbers yesterday, so now it's 371 calls for the year. We're on pace for about 742 for the full year, which is up 120 from last year. In the last week, we've been to calls for opiate overdoses, gunshots, assaults, multiple motor vehicles, as well as structure fires with multiple other calls on top of it that we've been handling. So yeah, I just wanted to keep you updated. We're definitely staying busy with all the events going on.
When it comes to the calls and the nature of calls, obviously they sound a lot more, I don't know if the urgent is the right word, but how are you guys holding up with equipment needs and things like that? Because I know at budget time we talk about, you know, all of the vents and batteries and all of those things. How are you guys doing according to budget, and are there any immediate needs that you didn't think about or didn't know about because they're popping up now?
Just wondering about like inventory budgets and supplies and that. If we're doing well for our budget.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look, we're pretty much on par for, we have received 58,000 plus for Medicare, a little for Medicaid, but it's included in there. And then for the billing so far, it's 78,000. So total income with the budget, the money budgeted is 203,000. So we're doing okay. We've got right now we have I think we've got about 30,000 left. But we also have a big check that's going to be coming from Memorial, and I've got several that haven't come in from Medicare yet.
Okay.
And Harvard Pilgrim, I don't know if you people know, but they've had an issue. They had a breach, so they're even processing the claims from them has been delayed, but they're starting to come through. So
good. And then, and on the supply side, I see what your bottom line is and everything. I just more wanted to say, wow, with all the calls you're having, hoping that everything is still good for you guys, because that's a lot of
right.
A lot of usage.
Well, our payroll is pretty significant at this point. It's 102,000, which includes obviously the FICA and Medicare and all that stuff. But these guys have been putting in crazy hours, so I'm sure it's not going to get in. It's not going to slow down any, not until possibly November for a few days. But
Good break next spring.
As long as we keep having floods and.
Right.
Remember when we used to have slow seasons twice a year?
yes, yeah,
We don't.
No,
not anymore. No.
And obviously that's taxing, so we have staffing down at the bottom, so we'll keep going on that.
Right, and then you all knew about the truck, the expenses for the truck. That was so far is $8,500.
Okay,
So far, we still
That
have.
was a lot of it was last year.
Yeah, we still have an issue.
Okay, hold on one sec. The immediate fix was 640, is that what you're talking about?
650-ish.
And then-
648 change.
Okay, and then what's the 8,000 then?
That was what we put into it last year.
Okay, I understand now. And
But that's, you do that.
you're limping along. And so you ordered the new truck, and that was going to be 18 to 24 months back then? Is there any?
18 to 24, I recall 2 to 3
Yeah.
years back.
Yeah,
We'll see.
but it is ordered and just we're in the queue somewhere?
We're voting on that launch, right?
Correct.
Yes.
We ordered it with the contingency that if we could
Right.
raise the funds through warrant or
Yeah,
else we would be able to
I'll
let it
put
go.
it.
But I think it's, in hindsight, of course, it's a wonderful thing that we do have it ordered, because as these things come up, it'll be probably easier to get the warrant article passed than not if you
Just
tabs
out of
on this.
curiosity, because I don't remember, can you refresh me, what's the year on the one that we want to replace?
2010.
2010. Thank you.
Has, is it 110,000 now?
Ish.
Sounds like a lot for an ambulance.
Depends on where they are.
Right, and that doesn't include the.
When you're
other
in
one.
Boston, something like that,
Yeah,
obviously
right.
the miles rack up faster, but
Right.
Mhm.
the age is definitely old for
Yeah,
trucks.
2010, 110. Thank you.
So does that cover the fire and technical rescue calls under your agenda item? Or do you want to touch on different?
No, I wanted to speak to something different on that. We had
Okay.
talked with, I know I've talked directly with Chief Courier. I haven't spoken to Jay Henry yet, but about coming to some more of the fire calls that we're not currently getting called to, particularly CO calls and technical rescue calls,
What is CO?
carbon monoxide.
Thank you.
Yeah, so carbon monoxide alarms. We reached out to our dispatch about it. They were reluctant to change anything without inviting us to every call, no matter what. So now we're kind of playing with that idea and seeing if it's a good idea to be going to every basic smoke alarm, things like that.
Mhm.
That have a tendency not to turn into anything, so that's typically why we don't go as EMS. But if we were to do that, it would take some of the workload off of the responding fire officers, thinking, trying to decide whether they need an ambulance there or not, just knowing that it's all automatically going to be there. And that is what they do in most places. So like most of Conway, there will be a fire department or an EMS
EMS.
ambulance to any fire call. Most of OVMA, which covers the southern part of the county, the same thing is true.
So protocol says that normally that you would have an ambulance attend to that. And right now, who's making the decision? The dispatch?
It's a mix of dispatch and the fire departments. I've stayed out of that a little bit.
So our exposure is that they're making the decision. I'm thinking negative, I guess, right now. The exposure is that if it were me, I would want to have a
Carbon
paramedic.
monoxide
would
is
be
not
inclined
a
to
silent
agree.
killer for a reason.
Right, and also building evacuation. I mean, that's a big issue that we all feel we should be involved in when they evacuate the Grand Summit in the middle of the winter. There's no place for these people to go. We can at least put some of them in, keep them warm, but you could have 75, 100 people that are
Mhm.
displaced if you get a fire alarm activation, and we're
Right.
typically not being toned to
I'll
those.
say, like, obviously we've all seen in the news the river rescues and things like that have been going on. I know there are at least 2 or 3 that have happened in Bartlett with no ambulance on scene.
Mhm.
No, we
So
don't.
if something were to go wrong, we'd be, 10, 15 minutes away from just driving to wherever they are.
Has it always been this way, or is this a recent development?
It's recent.
And when could you kind of narrow down when this started?
3 years ago.
Thank you, that's all I need to know.
Okay.
Who made the decision?
That's what my, yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
know,
know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
we know.
Okay.
We were never consulted.
Could have been the
Well-
chiefs, could have been dispatch. Could just-
Well, what do we do?
No, I don't believe so, because I believe that, we've been told that the fire chief is responsible for anything that goes on in the town of Bartlett.
Mhm.
We disagree. We've looked it up. Any medical calls are our responsibility. And however, we're not always toned. We had a fatal incident on the 4th of July where they took it upon themselves to respond with the chief and the rescue one without being toned. And then they canceled our personnel who were already leaving. They were en route. I mean, the outcome was no different in that case, but the point is, they weren't staying in their own lane, so.
So whose responsibility then is it, I'm just throwing it out there, to be able to make those decisions? Is it,
As far as who gets called out to
or what?
which calls, or
Or if you say, we should be toned on and called on all of these calls,
Can
How
I
do you-
simplify it?
yeah.
If somebody just reaches out and says, hey, we got people here, can we help you with this? It's a whole different game. Not upset.
but as far as You're saying who gets dispatched to what calls?
No, how do you change it to say,
Oh, change.
we want to have the Bartlett Jackson ambulance service on all the calls?
So our dispatch has agreed that if we want to go on everything, they're happy to do that.
Okay.
It's just basically a letter signed by ourselves and both fire chiefs, and we'll have that in place.
But do you think that's the best solution to this issue?
Mm-mm.
What do you think is a better solution?
I would like to see it, we originally asked them with, again, a signed letter from both chiefs, to be dispatched to everything with the exception of simple smoke alarms and what they consider chief's calls. So like going out to inspect something, basic calls for service that wouldn't have any real emergency value to it. They said basically that on the dispatch side that would complicate things too much, and that our options on that side were either keep it the way we are now or go to everything.
Well, in reality, the chief could cancel us if it was a smoke alarm. They could immediately say, to cancel us. That's not a big issue. I mean, I think the ones that we're really concerned about is that first of all, the fire department has a few trained people, medically trained people, but for the most part, they don't. And they don't have the experience that we have. And not that we're good at river rescue, nor do we want to do it, but we also know how to contact the resources that we need in order to make that happen. So it just isn't working well, I guess.
But the chiefs are supportive,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
structuring it in a way that works well for the.
I know Jay was on board, Jeff's been on board with either option. I know Jay was on board with our original plan to go to most things. I haven't spoken directly to him about going to everything, but I would assume that he is.
Yeah.
So if you drafted the letter and presented it to both the chiefs, do you feel like it would be agreeable
I believe so, yes.
and respected?
Mhm.
Okay, then, are you?
With the addition
equipped to
and,
staff
sorry, go
that?
ahead.
Are you equipped to staff that?
We are equipped to staff it. It will be probably, I don't know the numbers for sure, but a significant number of more calls, potentially 200, 250 more. So we're looking at over 1,000 calls a year at that point, which just increases our staffing issues and moves things along in a plan.
Right. And I'm, obviously concerned about the dollars of it, but more concerned with lives and safety.
Right.
And that, so, go ahead, Vicki.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, Rick, how many years have you been doing this?
Since 1968.
68.
Can't.
You, music, and I remember you back in 88, okay? Are we going in the right direction with this?
I'm very excited as to where we are right now. We've got the best trucks in the valley, bar none, sorry, action. They're the cleanest. They're well-staffed most of the time. We're doing a lot of transfers because they can't cover them, so we're taking some of the stuff they can't cover. We don't really look for them. I get calls, typically 3 calls in a 24-hour period to see if we can help with moving people or something. We've done that. We've done traumas. We've done cardiac stuff. We've done a lot of things. We've even let actually borrow our truck at one point because it was broke. So I think we're going in the right direction. I think we're very personnel related, and I think we help people in town more than people realize. You will see that once you start working on this, for sure.
No, but specifically this
This direction is great. I wouldn't want to be anywhere we're not. It's this has come to where we are today. I wanted to be 3 years ago, but we're finally here.
And I've been going to the trainings, and I'm so impressed with this group of people, and they're so collegial and so respectful to each other, and learning at this incredibly high level, but still making it fun. And there's food. So I mean, I can't say enough nice things about all of you.
Do you track how many calls you've gone to after the fact? So if you didn't get called on something that you should have originally, in your opinion, been at, do you get called after the fact for those? How often?
I don't think we have any easy way of tracking that at the moment.
Gotcha. I mean, I think if
The
that's,
only way you can do it is to look at fire calls versus
Yeah.
EMS calls.
yeah,
And a lot of overlap.
and again, I'm not as concerned about that, I guess, as making sure you guys are reading along. And like I said, I personally would want you guys there if I were in danger of any kind.
Right.
Yeah, so, I'm wondering how this looks today. I mean, with us only having a quorum in one town, it's not like we can make a motion in second, but I think
Mhm.
we're all supportive of you crafting a letter
Mhm.
or, and Barbara's the liaison in Jackson, and she's happy to help with that and work to get those letters of support.
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything that this board necessarily would need to do.
Good.
It's just basically a letter informing dispatch what we would like.
Yeah.
So that can be done without the board, I think.
Okay,
But we just wanted to discuss it with you and
yeah, okay.
keep you aware of
Does it make sense?
Good.
the idea that we'd be increasing our call volume significantly with it.
And then you guys will determine whether it's a call that you should go on. Because it might be something.
Well, if we
that's-
get told to, we'll go to make sure.
Yeah.
Because
So if
we
we,
don't go,
if we
we
get called out to something, we're going unless somebody cancels us
That's
before we get there.
That's right.
So if a fire officer wants to cancel us, knowing it's, a smoke alarm
Yeah,
at a building
right,
they've been
that's what I
at
mean.
10 times, something like that.
But there's that kind of communication going into the system.
Correct.
Well, this is all.
Yeah.
Now, if we did request of the fire chiefs to do that, they're gonna get called, but you can let them know if they're not needed for some very specific things, not carbon monoxide, but the false alarms. From their point of view, I mean, they're now not at an emergency, would that be adding a layer to what we're expecting them to do that simply isn't practical?
No, I don't think so. I think right now.
To me, it doesn't seem that way, but I'm not doing what you guys are
Right.
doing, so.
Right now, even when the fire department gets challenged, if it is something that the chief or an officer decides is not warranted to have other people on the road, they just say everyone hold in quarters.
Okay,
So it's not,
it's not an uncommon occurrence.
right,
Okay.
I don't
There
want to
is-
speak for them and,
right. But that's what currently happens as far as their own staffing.
Thank you.
All right, well, yeah, I think if, like you said, if no motion is needed, then pursue that, and if there's
Okay.
any hiccups, just keep us apprised of
of
that.
course.
All right, training updates?
Yep, so,
Go ahead.
so Barbara had sent me something about mobile integrated healthcare, which is, sort of in brief, it's a community-based medical system that's outside of the 911 environment. So it's kind of like bringing back the old doctor house calls, where the doctor would come to your house and check you out there, except it's using the EMS resources to do that. So the main sort of goal of these programs typically is hospital avoidance, so keeping the members of our community out of the ER. If we can maybe monitor blood tests, take labs there, bring them down to the hospital ourselves and keep them out of the ER. Either preventative things, so doing blood pressure checks, making sure people are taking their medications as they're supposed to, that kind of thing. There are a lot of different parts to these programs. But I know Barbara had sent me something asking if I knew anything about it. I was wondering if she wanted to discuss it at all, creating a program like this. I had gone to a training last spring, sort of laying out how to set up these programs and what to do with them, and some of the issues that might happen.
Yes,
Yes.
how is it different from visiting nurses? Would this program be more urgent care?
So it's partially taking some of the workload off of visiting nurses. The way it's currently set up, it's very much in their sphere, so we actually, at the state level, have a waiver from the visiting nurses allowing us to act in this sphere. But it's designed to be a little bit faster acting. So basically, if you're at your doctor's and they decide that you should be enrolled in a program like this, it can be set up very quickly versus some of the red tape you have to go through for VNA. It's also designed to be a little bit less acuity than having a visiting nurse coming in. So it is more of that avoidance, like come in, check your vitals, that kind of thing, not necessarily people that need the mobility assistance and things like that that the VNA might be providing.
Thank you.
can definitely see something like that, like in the future. Right
Mhm.
now, I don't think we're equipped for it, and like you said
I-
too, which is one of the biggest
Well,
things, is the
Again,
reimbursement.
I'll speak to that when you're done.
Okay, yeah, the reimbursement factor and, you know,
Right.
how to make the money off of
Mhm.
it, the staffing, there's so many nuances and issues around
Right.
it. But in our community, I think it would be something that, like you said, to complement visiting nurses or supplement that. It would
Mhm.
be interesting to see what that could turn into. And of course, having 2 ambulances is tough to commit staffing.
Right, so the way
for that.
the way these programs typically work is out of like an SUV or something like that. They can be done out of an ambulance, obviously,
Yeah.
but you don't need the full
All
transport
of that.
capability and everything.
Mm.
So that, I don't know if it would decrease the cost here where we could use the second ambulance necessarily, but that is also an option.
Rick?
We've sort of been doing this for a long time already.
So
more
it's
than
kind of do it.
And really what it is neighbors helping neighbors more than anything. Once you get into the higher level, you need to be tied into either a clinic or a hospital or something, so that they can maybe staff with a nurse if you need it, so you can do the blood work and things. Well, we've already been doing the house check, checking on people. You guys have got that community thing in
Yeah.
Jackson anyway, people sign up for.
Safety
So this is
check.
not a new thing. I did just this morning, I got a call from Kimberly, my colleague, who's doing what's it take to hire veterans? Money. And what's it take to retain personnel? So we had that conversation, and she's involved in that, mobile integrated health. And explained to her we've already been doing it. The state had no idea people have already been doing it. So she wants to come up and do some stuff with us too, from Concord.
What's the, isn't there a program in Tamworth? Or
There's a community nurse in Tamworth.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
no, that's what Chris Purley got excited about when his wife started working there.
Yeah.
Most of us have known that for the last 40 years.
Right, right.
But we're not detectives, so you know.
But,
But we've always done it. We'll go to your house if you're sick and elderly and likely to get something from being in a hospital, like COVID. We've always done call the medical control line. This is where we are, this is what the vitals look like. We can send, if we choose to, an EKG to the hospital, you know, say, yep, bring them in, or they're fine at home. But we've been doing that since ambulance was a horse drawn. So, but it's a small community, so you can do it.
yeah, know your neighbors.
So can an advanced EMT draw blood?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are some portions that you do have to be a paramedic to do, some of the medication administrations and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, an advanced EMT can draw blood and do a lot of the parts for the mobile.
Was this a New Hampshire training, the mobile integrated?
Yes,
health?
so they
That was
had,
the state?
I believe it was through the healthcare initiative for rural communities. They got a grant from, I forget which department, something at the federal level, to put on a bunch of these trainings
Yeah.
within New Hampshire. So I did that in the spring up in Bethlehem at the fire academy there.
And there are EMS services that are currently filling that?
I
role
believe
in
there
the
are
state?
3 or 4 in the state at the
Not very many.
moment. It's a relatively new thing from the state side of things.
Mhm.
So they're working to build out more programs.
Well, a model of the future perhaps,
Mhm.
or, you know, refining it. Like you
Mhm.
said, you do it
Yeah.
already, but, you know, getting reimbursement from insurance
Yes,
would
yes,
certainly
yes.
be a nice
Right.
component to that too. Instructor 1,
Yes, so yesterday actually I started an Instructor 1 class in Concord with the goal of just bringing some more professional trainings to our department in the area. Sort of increasing our standard of training and care through that.
what does that involve?
It is a 5-week, 1-day-a-week class that will, at the end, give me a pro board certification for Instructor 1.
And you make them wear a suit and tie.
Oh, serious?
I want pictures.
You looked good yesterday,
Yeah.
when you left the fire.
So do you take that information and bring it back here and use that for training?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then interdepartment training?
Yeah, so I just wanted to sort of reiterate our commitment to interdepartment training. We haven't done a lot of it recently. We've been kind of
Busy?
busy and all kind of said that we'd like to and never got around to the picking a date portion of it. But with both the fire departments and the police just being able to work together, know each other's equipment, all that sort of thing.
Right. Have you approached the other departments out in that yet?
I know I've talked a lot with Brian Moffett from Bartlett Police and Chief Courier. I've talked less with some of the Jackson guys, but
Got you.
we have all kind of agreed that it's a good idea, but
Yeah.
finding that date and time is a little bit difficult at the moment.
Interesting. Yeah, we're, in the near future, we're gonna be starting to have some more public hearings and more visibility of our emergency services just from the capital improvement plan and the fact that we all are continuing to talk about the fire station and other services. So if that's something where we can highlight the amount of services that are provided in the town, that might
Right.
be a good forum for that too, sharing. All right. Any questions about the training?
I have something that wasn't on here, which I actually neglected to talk about. The program that we use to write our reports is called Tempsys.
Yep.
There is a new program out that is a bridge to that. So instead of having to put everything in again in a billing program, we would be able to pull it from the Tempsys reports, and then they would bill it through like a third party. It would be, I don't know what the cost is, we're still looking at it. Caitlin's done some investigating, I've got some stuff, some feelers out there for, they're having a demo on it in Chicago, that's where,
Minnesota, I think.
I mean, it's somewhere out west,
Minneapolis.
Midwest.
She's
And
Nancy's kid.
so we're gonna send Caitlin to that, and I think that's in October. But we don't know exactly what the cost is.
They've got that in an email to me as of yesterday. That we're gonna have a teleprompt thing.
Yes, but I didn't see the cost.
They said they put a cost on it at that time.
Okay, but anyway, the point of it is, it will eliminate all the duplication of billing that we already do now. And it would probably be much more efficient, because then they can track what, it's, the program that we have is very, very simple. It costs $250 for annual maintenance, so that tells you something. It works, but it could be improved, so this is what we're looking at. And we expect that we'll give it a trial anyway.
Do you file paper claims now, or do you send to EDI when you do your,
I'm sorry?
do you file paper claims for all of your?
No, everything goes electronic.
Okay.
The only ones that go with paper are ones that, like Maine Medicaid, or some of the ones that we are having trouble getting affiliated with.
Gotcha.
But
So this is a software program that syncs with Tempsys?
Yes.
And then automatically
Populate.
bills a third party?
yes,
Yes.
after we've made the necessary things to go with it to make sure that we've got everything, we have the insurance in, and we have, the name, the date of birth, all that stuff is
Yeah.
correct.
Right.
So the claims don't get rejected. So
That's nice.
it definitely will be, because it's already being put in there,
Yeah.
with the exception that, that we don't always have the insurance company or the ID that goes with that. So but that's a minor thing that we can work on. And like, as I just said, it doesn't automatically go. It goes as we pull it to go.
Sure.
So we just think it would be a great asset.
And that training is in Chicago in October?
Minneapolis.
And Minneapolis. Yes.
Sorry.
Yep.
And, okay, so, and you got somebody that's definitely going right now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, when you find out the name of the program or whatever, just shoot it to me, just like to know,
Yeah,
like the name of the program
The
is.
film bridge.
Yeah, Billing Bridge, yeah.
Billing Bridge, oh, okay.
Yeah, and it is associated with the Tempsys report, which is,
Oh, okay.
Tempsys itself, which is part of the state program.
Yeah, good.
And did you say it was Kate who's gonna do that?
Caitlin is.
Okay, and she's the person who you're kind of training to know
Yes,
everything that
right,
you're
yes.
Okay.
Was there a cost for the training?
Yes,
Is it?
we don't, I think the training was free, but it will be her, it'll be
Road,
travel,
transportation.
getting her there.
Yeah.
Staying, yeah.
Right. You got room in the budget for that?
Yeah,
Is
we'll
there
sell ice
professional
cream.
Yeah, we
development?
got quite a bit, we have training money, yeah. And if not, we have, you
Get
know,
a credit card too.
All right.
that's good. We just
Soon to
feel
build
it's,
me.
we just feel it's worth it. I mean, it's definitely will be, it'll be a big time saver. So just savings alone in the billing, you know,
Well, plus the accuracy and
Yeah.
the timing of getting paid for your claims and stuff,
Right.
that would be great. Yeah, let us know how that goes then.
right?
Sure.
And there's a possibility that I may go if I get back, but I'm gonna be in Alaska the first week, so I'm not sure.
Why don't you go through Minneapolis to get to them?
That's, I could, just scoot right over.
That's interesting. Well, good luck with
Well,
that. That
it
would be
depends
good.
if the polar bears get me or not, so.
There you go. I hope they don't, just saying. All right, Heart Safe Communities.
So I'm not sure if you guys are aware, Heart Safe Communities is a national initiative, but administered at the state level. So it's through the state of New Hampshire for us. And its goal is to decrease the morbidity and mortality due to sudden cardiac arrest out of hospitals. So it's basically a certification that your town or coverage area, so for us it would be Bartlett, Jackson, Hearts location, could gain, which basically says we're actively working to improve our cardiac arrest outcomes and increase the survivability. Currently, it's less than a 10% chance of surviving sudden cardiac arrest without any major debilitating injury. And there are communities that have significantly increased that number. So that's not something that just is what it is necessarily.
Yeah.
To get this certification for our service area's size, it would be 10 CPR or AED classes per year that would need to have at least 5 participants. I believe anything put on by, say, like Attitash's Ski Patrol and Black Mountain Ski Patrol, Storyland First Aid would count towards that total, as well as our yearly recertification and anything the fire departments do. So I don't think that's an unattainable number. It would be 5 AED sites with AED trained personnel in public or private areas where people are likely to congregate, which again, I believe would include things like Storyland and Attitash.
Schools?
So yeah, schools is separate.
Schools already have defibrillators. So.
Yeah, so it would be 2 AEDs in schools with AED personnel and written CPR or AED emergency response plans.
So it's not just the training, it's actually bringing AEDs into where
It's
they're-
right, getting them out in the community for that rapid defibrillation
Yeah, right.
and the training to recognize it and use them.
Mhm.
Are you talking about the ones in the heated boxes that can stay out all winter and
It wouldn't necessarily have to be heated boxes, I don't believe. Things like inside the school would count where the
you
buildings are
can't get to
heated.
them if you get in the middle of the night?
Right.
I was thinking when I talked to you about it, more like the Canadian system or the Lincoln system,
Right.
where they have several deployed,
Mhm.
that you go to a box, you ring the bell in the box, they take your picture, they open the box for you, they know who you are, you get the defibrillator and it walks you through, it's a big card
Mhm.
on how to use it.
Right.
Does Grants have one?
Nobody's got one here yet, we're talking about trying to come up with a way to do that.
Do they have an AED? No, Grants
No.
does not.
Not that
I think they should have one. I think the physical therapy
Yeah.
should have
They
one.
might.
I think they just got one up at Christmas Mountain, at the club.
They did.
But that's another part of it, is a registry of where has them and
Right.
that, and we can get that to the state 911, and they can actually direct people to them that,
Right.
if they're having a cardiac arrest in that area. Probably the biggest part of this would be that ALS needs to be dispatched to any suspected cardiac injuries. So that would be either an AEMT or a paramedic. And depending on our staffing levels, that could require calling mutual aid in for calls for that paramedic or AEMT.
And so obviously, other than the statistics and the fact that you have a better chance of saving someone, is there a benefit and other things? Are you eligible for other?
Nothing that I've seen from that side of it. No.
I mean, certainly the recognition and
Right.
having the equipment is.
Mhm.
the
And I
way to
have
be
not
set up.
reached out to the state and asked them any of those questions. There might be
Okay.
something that I'm not aware of.
So would you kind of be going to like a pickleball tournament or something and just keeping an eye on all the old people?
That's
Well,
good.
good question, they have tournaments, I don't know about pickleball, but hockey rinks usually have
Yeah.
the defibrillator there.
Yeah.
Yes, this wouldn't be anything, say, the ambulance is
Rugby
doing.
pitches always happen.
It would be
Strictly
community.
preventing,
It
but
would
yeah,
be
it's that idea of getting the whole
outreach.
community involved, and getting those life-saving measures out into the community so they can be used before EMS gets there.
A lot of restaurants already had them. But again, I don't know how well they're doing these things. I don't know if they really want to get into it, pick up $1,000 investment.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know which ones we do have already in town that may not be accessible to the public, but just to know if those are there, how could they be made,
Right.
if they could be
Well, I
made.
mean, our goal in Bartlett, honestly, is to get one in every police car. We lost one the other night.
Right.
Didn't lose it. They
Yeah.
got impounded. We'll get it back. It's just a question of when.
That and, and the training to have them, even if we don't, I mean, even if we can't get this far, just making sure that people know where the AEDs are and
Right.
training. So
It's
we
like
can
being in an
access.
airport. You
Yeah,
get them in an airport, you see the thing, you open the box and the alarm goes off.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, have security chase you down and see where you're going with it.
Would having access through a key card to the one at the school, like having a key card in
Just don't do travel locks.
What's that?
Yeah, the key cards don't do the locks that are on the fire station.
Little hand break this glass.
I don't think it would be super helpful, because if you think, who would you give the key out to that wouldn't already have access through other means to,
Or like a lockbox, like you said, or some kind of camera.
yeah, so they
Well,
have,
the-
lock
the
boxes,
ones-
and we can give
Yeah.
911 the code for it.
Yeah.
So
The
they can
ones
tell
on
somebody
fire
over
will
the
have a
phone.
phone, pick it up, dispatch
Yeah.
says, hey, what do you need? I need the defibrillator, okay, they ID you, they take your picture, you take your machine out.
And we got to call them at the same time.
But they've got those over in Lincoln Woodstock. Not all have been deployed, but about half have been.
Keep us posted on what you find, and if you
Okay.
need any help with the resources here, and of course Chief Gurley and
Mhm.
those guys should know where some of them are in town, as well
Right.
as Jay, of course, so.
So that's in process, you're taking steps to become a heart-safe community.
So we haven't taken any steps now, I was more
Thinking
wondering if,
about it.
if you guys would be interested in that kind of thing.
I'd love to know what's available now, like
Okay.
in our town, and
Right.
find out how far we would need to go. I could see something like this being a popular fundraising type of activity, or I say activity like it's fun, but, something where being a largely senior population, where we could say
Right.
we're trying to prevent more, or increase our chances of
Right.
success.
Mhm.
That would be interesting
Right.
to at least start.
Right, well,
with
even
that.
even the young people, the chances, the quicker they're defibrillated, the quicker they're gonna be saved.
Yep.
And they're the ones that are going to, the older people often have comorbidity things that, prevent them from being,
Right.
Right, research.
Survive.
Yeah.
where the younger people, say if they're at a race or whatever, and they just collapse, those are the ones who need the intermediate, not that everybody doesn't, but
I know.
they're the ones that
Yeah.
are most
More
viable.
likely
Yeah.
to see.
You say cardiac arrest, it improves outcomes from typically a 10% success rate to what in some communities?
I mean, there are communities that are at, I believe, about 60%. That is
That's
pretty
huge.
substantial.
large community involvement, investment
But
in it.
that's like Seattle, Tacoma.
Right, yeah, typically larger
Yeah.
areas, they teach everybody in,
Sure.
grade 6 or 7 CPR, and have been doing that for a very long time.
It would be interesting though.
The
just in
realistic
this
number is
community.
24%.
For currently.
Would be what?
4.
It's interesting.
I think over the years, we've had a great success rate. And if you look at the national average, I think we've had a lot of saves,
Right.
which is impressive.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we still talk to some of the people.
And they talk back.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, and they answer back.
That's the best part of it.
Too soon? All right,
Yes,
community
thank you.
and provider safety.
Mhm. So I just wanted to bring up the point of Jackson Police and the coverage, obviously the staffing issues that they're experiencing and the safety impact it would have on us and other first responders. I could speak for all of us when we say that we'd like to see a larger police department in Jackson that's able to cover a larger portion of the day.
Yeah, we would all.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally appreciate that.
The other side of that is I have heard from some of the Bartlett officers that they don't necessarily feel welcome in Jackson. if they were to come out and help us when Jackson Police are not available. Because that's just another side of that, something that might delay them when we need them.
That's unfortunate.
Mhm.
We can certainly take that to a non-public if we feel like it, we could talk about it a little more openly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question, Barbara.
Sure.
Rick, I think at our last meeting, you had some concerns about the Jackson ad for a new police officer, and I see the ad in the paper again. Were your concerns dealt with, or they still exist?
What was
It was
they
the
weren't
fact that
paying
they're
up?
advertising that they're EMTs.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
yeah,
That
but
they provide emergency medical services.
a lot of people in Jackson think that that's who you come to, so we've had people, you know, it's not a bad thing, but they come to the police station instead of calling 911, and it just takes extra time.
Okay.
That was my concern.
I
But
remember.
this week they went to the fire station, so that worked. But Chris came over. So we were all there together.
Is staffing?
Staffing, so we are currently for staffing in the process of onboarding 4 new members, I believe.
14?
4.
40.
Including you.
Oh, 4 new members, got you. Wow,
Including you, right?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so we're working on getting them trained up and proficient in the skills that they need, the equipment and everything else.
Great.
Obviously, we're always still looking for new members, if anybody is interested. And I know last time we talked a little bit about the pay rate changes and that kind of thing. I didn't know if you had any more comments or questions on that.
I was really impressed with the work that you did on that, and I think that when it comes time for budgeting for next year, we need to look at that sooner rather than
Right.
later. So like July, our next meeting is October, and I think that's when we need to definitely bring that new pay structure. I don't know where we sit as far as financially, if something like that could be impacted in this year's budget, maybe with decisions between the two boards, but I think it, give it some consideration when you're looking at the budgets, but I think it,
Right.
without a doubt, needs to be explored for next year's budget.
Okay.
Right, because it's a total different pay structure, and
Mhm.
it makes so much sense, but,
Right.
and I think for your recruiting purposes, that would, not recruiting as much as just getting people to sign up.
Right.
for
Yeah, our
shifts.
current members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that you and I did talk about, though, I think, is that the roster that some people may see on when to work is very different than the roster that you all have, which has the folks that are actually available to work. So, because I talked to somebody and she said,
Well,
oh,
so I
look
don't
at,
see why you think it's different.
there are people on when to work that look like they might be available, but they haven't worked for many, many shifts. But your roster is
And there are
active.
people that take shifts that never take the shifts they cover, or they say they'll cover.
But I think what I'm talking about though is like, you have a spreadsheet and an
Yeah, we have a
active
radio roster.
Yeah, a
That's
radio
the-
roster
Right.
that says, these are actually our people
Mhm.
that we can rely on that are local. Some people have moved away, but they're still listed on when to work, but they,
Yeah, and one of them today happened to be there from Bar Harbor for an accident.
sweet,
Haven't seen him for 3 years. I was gonna have lunch with him today at some point,
yeah.
and he ends up in an accident scene. He said, jump in, you're still on the road.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah,
But I mean,
that's why I did that.
Yeah, and it's all good. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure that it's not necessarily 50 people, it's 30 more, or 30,
Mhm.
and I'm throwing numbers out, just example. There are actually 30 that are pretty active and local, and then it, yeah, whatever.
And that radio roster does go out to all of our members as well.
Right,
Yeah, I mean, everybody's aware who is actually physically here.
if,
A lot.
if they read what you give them.
Yeah,
Wow.
or if they come to meetings,
Right.
right, yeah, if they came
or
to
if
the
they
meetings and
take the shifts they sign up for.
But a lot of people are people that have helped us out in the past and still, they may, some of them live in different places, but they come here, they may be here for a week.
Right,
Scooter, for instance, is, he's here a couple times, 3 times a year.
mhm,
And so obviously I'm gonna keep him on, I'm gonna
Sure.
get him off.
Mhm.
But he's not the only one, there's other people's that are in the same circumstance, so.
good. All right.
Should we show the survey stuff?
Yeah.
We did a survey, and I've only got one copy, and we sort of do it, you guys can sort of look through it, see what it says if you want. It sort of checks the pulse of how people are doing. And we got the results of it. It's an anonymous thing. It's a mental health thing to find out if we're pushing to people in burnouts or secondary traumatic stress. And pretty much we were very happy with the results. The compassion satisfaction was mostly rated high to moderate. There was no compassion, it was low.
Can I ask, who did you survey?
All of our members.
So we
So you
gave it out at
surveyed
one of
your
our monthly
staff.
meetings.
Okay, that's why I was wondering if you surveyed staff.
This is written by actually a friend of mine named Jeff Stewart,
Mhm.
that I know when he was a little kid. He's been a paramedic for a number of years. He's probably retired this year if he chooses to be. But secondary traumatic stress has been rated as low pretty much by everybody, a little bit by moderate, which is pretty good. When you start getting them in the highs, then you worry. But everything was sort of landed in the zones that we were pleasantly pleased with.
Good, very good. So even if there's a few things to improve, are there any issues that you feel like that need to be addressed that could improve with a little effort? Do you feel like you're getting the support you need after calls, certainly with the
I think
severity
we are
of
this
some
week.
of the calls?
We had
Yeah, you
a
had
debriefing company come in and work with us a
Good.
little bit. Actually, one of them lives in Jackson, one lives in Lincoln. And it was a Nashua police officer. Bob actually showed up to that. We asked him to leave because he wasn't part of the 5th of July motor show. And as we went through that, I think it was pretty predictable. We had already done it once before, the secondary night after that, and then we came 3 days later and did it again with professionals. And we did well. We scored okay with all the points and everything. Still, we got some. If people need to talk to people, we have a group of people they can reach out to. So.
Good,
And that doesn't necessarily have to be for traumatic or catastrophic
yeah.
things. You can do for anything.
Is this our copy to keep?
I don't have a spare copy of that. Did we scan that?
I can find it online again, so.
Yeah, you're just
Yeah,
shooting
you can
an
keep
email
that.
to
Yeah,
us.
sure, yeah.
Or fill it out and you can pass it around to selectmen. I'll give you the answer code.
Nice. No thanks, no.
Come on.
Financial updates, we talked a little bit about the budget and stuff. Any concerns or?
No, I think we're doing well. I mean, we're on par for pretty much, obviously didn't expect the expenses of, well, we anticipated expenses for the truck. We didn't realize they were gonna cost that much. But
That was all last year, though. The 8,500 was last year.
no, this is this year.
We didn't do it this year.
No.
Not that much. That's something else.
I should have brought the backup for it. I don't have.
I was gonna
it.
say, where would that show up on
Inspections
here?
and all that.
That includes everything.
Yeah, so that's, yeah, the 8,500 is the total work this year.
Includes
So.
the new tires, it includes the, everything that we've had done.
Okay,
The insurance went up a little bit,
mm-hmm,
nothing major.
Well, we also changed we went to replacement costs for both trucks too, instead of getting the 10-year-old cost of two.
gotcha.
So when the state police asked me the other day, can we move your truck? I said, if you hit something, make it count.
Yeah,
If you want a copy, I'll get you a copy of that.
yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
We don't normally do a fundraiser. This year, we were invited by the Bartlett Rec to do the cookout for the 4th of July. And we had, surprisingly, it was a good turnout for midweek. So we didn't make, but we brought in well over $1,000. And for the food and everything, it was like $649. So it was not a big, not a big gain, but it was a good thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
You know,
some of
people
it's
were
the
happy.
exposure, yeah.
Yeah.
Rob and I had talked a while ago about doing an appeal letter to the residents of both towns possibly, because you are a nonprofit organization. And I just think that that might be something that is still a good idea. Timing is important when you do appeal letters because the amount of nonprofits that are in the area, and the amount of appeals that go out. But I just think that something like that might be a consideration, especially if we try something with the Heart Safe Communities or some other initiatives. And if we have a focused campaign, I think that might be something that we should always keep on top of mind.
Well, currently, we have a good amount of money in the donation account. We're going to be
I'm
back.
spending 14,000 next week, so.
Yes. Well, you can
You
explain.
used to have.
No, we still have more.
There's a piece of equipment that is known as a stair chair, and it's going to be motorized. I don't know what
It
exactly.
goes upstairs.
Yeah.
is what
Yeah,
it
so
says.
that,
So you don't have to
so
carry.
you don't have the lifting.
Yeah.
It is expensive, but we feel that's a great thing to use some of the donation money for.
Yeah,
Increase provided safety, decrease back injuries, and things
Sure,
like that.
sure.
Right. So that's coming up next month.
17.
Other than that, we don't anticipate any major things, but I mean, with the old truck, who knows? I mean,
yeah.
we really don't know.
Anything else, Vicki?
I have a few
I
questions.
was gonna say,
from-
Jim.
I have a few questions just from the community preparation standpoint.
Sure.
I don't know if you'd rather, outside of the meeting, talk about this, but, you know, I think we are thinking long-term, and even short-term, you know, how things stand from the point of view of space. A good running, well, first of all, let me say that it's a pleasure to see the workings of a small town ambulance service, the humanism that comes out, and the care for individuals, the ability to and desire to be the best you can be, just stands out to a person like myself, having worked in a big city place. And so there's a lot of congratulations to go around. You know, if we need to recognize the fact they're doing a fabulous job.
Yeah.
But when I think of long-term EMS, I'm thinking of training space, not only for yourself and for the personnel, but for the public. If you want to have a community venture where people are trained in choke saving and making your houses fall preventive, you know, particularly elderly citizens like myself, who hang around. And the poison prevention stuff, in addition to the wonderful things you're talking about from the CPR standpoint. We have a lot of big inns, a lot of hotels. You know, we could use AEDs every place where people congregate. And that would be an unbelievable community venture to see. But from a space standpoint, you know, do you have or do you need space that's readily available, that's for you, that you don't have to share with other people? Do you have safe, secure storage for equipment and for medications?
So we have classroom space in our station that we share with the fire department
Yeah.
in Bartlett. I don't know for sure how many people we can fit in there, but it's
Yeah,
30 to 40,
35.
35.
And we've got Jackson Fire that,
And is
David
there
Association.
on-call space that's decent?
I'm sorry?
On-call space, for people who are waiting to be called in?
So we actually do not have quarters in our station now.
Yeah, so that's a need,
Right.
you know, at both places, no doubt. And then I'm wondering about, you know, the equipment, the vehicles getting bigger and bigger because the quality of the equipment, gets bigger and bigger. Is the current space decent, needed, or do you need additional space? Do we need to be thinking about that sort of thing?
I think for the moment it works, but that is something as we
Yeah.
move towards the future.
But I'm hearing you talk about potentially increasing call volume from what looks like 3, 4, 5 a day up to, you know, maybe
we
more than
could
that.
add 250 to 300 if we started going through a lot of fire calls.
Yeah,
But that really isn't going to change.
I understand,
That's
yeah.
not going to change the space we need.
no, and you know, there's always a balance to be had between being called for every call
Yeah.
or being called for the ones that are most productive.
Right.
You know, and I think this situation you brought up earlier about mobile integrated health, that the future is coming.
Right.
You know, and even we in the local hospitals, we're going more and more these days toward mobile calls to virtual calls. And that's got to be something that has to be planned for,
Mhm.
you know, as part of this effort.
Right.
You have a well-trained staff, you know, who knows how to make things better. You look and see where the preventive measures need to be taken. we need to get you out and visible and in the community so that we all know that this is available. you know?
Right.
So I think there's so many initiatives that just as a newcomer to this, I see, it's very satisfying,
Yeah,
but yet the challenges are there that have to be met.
right. And as part of the planning board, and you've got pretty much half the fire department sitting behind you now, and the fact that the ambulance resides in the
Right.
in the Glen Fire Station now, both ambulances do. We're
Yeah.
constantly keeping that in the back of our mind. Do we want an ambulance in Jackson? Do we want to have one in Bartlett, one in Jackson?
Yeah, sure.
And where are these spaces available?
Well,
Because as the
The
department
community is
grows-
getting older, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are.
New Hampshire is the
Trying not
third
to-
oldest
Yeah,
state in the United States after Maine and Vermont.
yeah,
And Jackson is one of the oldest communities in New Hampshire. So I think, we're not looking at a decrease in calls
right.
going forward, we're
Right.
looking at an increase.
Now, we're looking at about a 10% increase every year,
Yeah.
going back to 2016.
Yeah, and I think a community like this needs the right facilities.
Right. Well, I'm gonna have to cut this short at
Are you gonna stay for the fire
3:30.
side too? I think you
But-
should.
Pardon?
Are you gonna stay for the fire meeting too?
It's a select
Appreciate
meeting.
what you just said.
Yeah.
Fire meeting, I didn't know this.
But, Jim, thank you for coming, and also if you do wanna talk to these guys again, feel free to talk to Robbie, Rick, and Sue, because
Yeah, yeah.
they're a wealth of information.
I'll talk to Julie and get some names and
Absolutely.
contact numbers.
And thanks for
But I
coming,
think we
Bill.
need a regular sort of communication
Yes,
system.
yeah. Anything else from the attendees here?
That's all I have.
All right, our next meeting is